I'll just start by telling a little bit about the Family Support Center, if that's okay for you two, Jessica and Gina. Thank you for being here today. So we have both the author and the illustrator of Monty's Day in Court here with us today, doing a live book reading and then Q&A for any questions we have afterwards. I'm with the Family Support Center. My name is Michaela, and I'm our Community Engagement Manager here in Salt Lake City. And we are a nonprofit that works to strengthen families and prevent child abuse. So we have various programs, but our three main programs are clinical services. We see kids 6 and up, adults and family. We have 3 crisis nurseries in Salt Lake County that are for kids 12 and under, completely for free. And then we have our Life Start Village, which is a self-sufficiency program for single parent families. We house 46 families at a time there. And we go from dependency to self-sufficiency, and that looks different for every family. So we have a bunch of programs, and we ultimately are just here to prevent child abuse. And so we are so grateful for you writing this book and for you being here today, you sharing your perspective and your story. I'll let you take it from here, if you don't mind, Jessica.
Yeah, no problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and read the book, and then we'll take some additional questions after that will hopefully clarify what's in the book. So,
Monty's Day in Court: What to Expect When You Have to Testify in Court by Jessica Miles, illustrated by Gina D. In 2017, our 10-year-old son, whom we adopted through foster care the previous year, testified against his biological father in court. It was a terrifying experience for all of us. This book is based on his experience. Every child's story is unique. Some children have forensic interviews. Some work with child advocacy centers. Some have a therapist. Some have court-appointed special advocates. And some work with district attorneys, victim advocates, and so on. In order to help children with their different stories, there is a discussion guide that accompanies this book. This story is intended to be used by counselors, therapists, court programs, social workers, teachers, parents, and other caring adults to help children better understand the process of testifying in court. We hope this book can be used as an additional resource to help children stand up, be heard, and begin the process of truly healing. Proceeds from this publication will be donated to Bikers Against Child Abuse and other organizations that help children in court. Visit montysdayincourt.com to access the discussion guide and other resources. Hi, my name is Monty, and I'm 10 years old. From the time I was born until I was almost 6, I lived with both my mom and dad. When I was little, I didn't tell anyone that my dad hurt me at night. I didn't like it, but I thought I had to do what my parents said. I knew from sleeping over at my friends' houses that other kids' dads did not do the same things to them. My dad told me he would hurt me or burn all my things if I told anyone, and I thought I was being a good boy by keeping it a secret. Sometimes I had sleepovers at my house with other kids. My dad would also hurt those kids when no other adults were around. My friend Donnie was one of them. Donnie got real upset when my dad hurt him. One day, Donnie was brave enough to tell his grandma what happened during the sleepovers. She called the police, and they went to Donnie's house to ask him questions. The following day, the police came over to our house to ask if the same thing had happened to me. And before I could answer, my mom and dad said no, and that Donnie made it all up. My parents called Donnie a liar, and I did not want to be called a liar, so I kept my mouth shut. Days later, the police came and took my dad away in their patrol car. My mom said it was called an arrest, and the police would ask him a lot of questions. Dad did not come home that night. He went to jail. For a long time after that, I felt confused and didn't know what to tell anyone. But one night, when Mom was tucking me in bed, I told her I was afraid that Dad would get out of jail. She asked me why, and I told her how he had hurt me. Mom and I cried together that night while she rocked me to sleep. Soon after I told my mom what happened, she started taking me to a therapist named Ms. Kelly. A therapist is someone who helps you with your feelings about difficult experiences. But I didn't know her, so for a long time I didn't say anything to her. We just played a lot of games and got to know each other. Sometimes Miss Kelly would ask me questions that I didn't know the answer to, so I drew pictures of my feelings instead. Other times I would use stuffed animals to show how my dad hurt me. Sometimes after our visits, I felt like punching pillows over and over again. It helped me feel better because I got all those angry feelings out. About a year later, Miss Kelly told me that she had some news. She said that my dad was going to trial, and this meant a court would decide if he was going to leave jail and return home or go to prison. I was afraid of my dad getting out and hurting me, but I also didn't like to think about my dad being behind bars. Ms. Kelly also told me I was being asked by the court in a request called a subpoena to talk about what my dad did to me and other kids. If I told my story, I would be standing up against the bad things my dad did. She said she knew it would be really hard, even though there would be other kids like Donnie speaking up for what happened to them. I would be the most important person there. I was mad at myself for not stopping my dad and hurting me. Donnie, and other kids. Maybe I should have tripped him, threatened him with a knife, or done something. Miss Kelly told me that it was never my job to stop my dad. She said he was a grown-up and he should have stopped himself. But I still felt mad and wanted to do something about it. I wasn't strong enough before, but I felt strong now. So I told Miss Kelly I would stand up to him by telling the truth in court. I had seen court on TV, but I didn't recognize all the people in the courtroom. It seemed very scary. To help me prepare for my day in court, my mom took me to a program that helps kids understand what court is all about. At the program, I met a really nice woman named Liza, who showed me a picture of a courtroom and explained who all the people were and what would happen. The judge is the person in charge of everything that happens in court. He or she is like a referee at a basketball or soccer game. They make sure everyone plays by the rules. You can tell who the judge is because they sit at the front of the courtroom at a big desk and wear a black robe. When the judge walks in the room, everyone stands up. The defendant is the person who is accused of a crime. In this case, my dad was the defendant because he was accused of hurting me and other kids. The jury is a group of people who decide if the defendant is guilty of the crime they're accused of. If there is no jury, the judge decides. The jury listens carefully to what everyone in court has to say. Then they talk to each other about what they heard and decide if they think the defendant is guilty or not. Sometimes it takes a short time for them to decide, but sometimes it can take days or even longer. A lawyer is someone who knows a lot about the rules of the court and how the law works. When someone is accused of a crime, like my dad, they get a lawyer to help defend them in court and make sure they are treated fairly. The lawyer represents the person they're helping. Lawyers usually sit next to the person they represent. Lawyers are also called attorneys. It's not just the person accused of a crime who has a lawyer. Lots of people have lawyers to help them, even kids like me. Liza told me I would have a lawyer ask me questions and help me talk to the judge and jury. The bailiff is a special police officer just for the court. The bailiff wears a uniform like a police officer's uniform. They maintain security and help keep everyone in the courtroom safe. The court reporter is the person who writes down everything that everybody says in court. They usually sit near the judge and type on a small machine. Witnesses are people who go to court to tell the judge and jury about what they've seen and heard. I'll be one of the witnesses in my dad's case. Liza explained that when it's my turn to talk, I'll sit in a special seat and take an oath, which is a promise to tell the truth. Then the lawyers will ask me questions about what happened. Liza understands it's scary to go to court and answer questions. Adults get scared too. But the important thing to remember is this is not my fault and I'm not in trouble. And by telling the truth about what my dad did, I'm helping to make sure that he won't hurt any more kids. I worried about the questions they would ask me in court. Would they ask me how my dad hurt me? Would I be embarrassed? Liza told me, just tell the court what I knew, and I could always say, I don't know. I wasn't going to be graded like in school. She also told me I could bring a comfort item like a stuffed animal to court. My Uncle Bob took me shopping for a suit because he said someone doing something so important should also feel important in their clothing, kind of like a superhero who has a cape. On the day I was going to speak in court, I got dressed in my suit, which made me feel very important. We had to wait our turn to go into court, and I felt so nervous, like a herd of zebras was running laps inside my body. When I entered the courtroom, I saw my dad at the defendant's table and felt like he was shooting daggers at me with his eyes. It had been over a year since I had last seen him. So many thoughts were racing around in my head. I was glad to see the bailiff was in the room to help keep me safe, just in case. The judge asked if I knew the difference between the truth and a lie. I said I did. My attorney asked me some questions. Then my dad's attorney asked me more questions. It felt like I was answering questions forever. But suddenly, I was done. I felt so relieved and tired too. Now we could go home. My mom gave me a huge hug and told me I was brave. I was just glad it was over. When I went back to school, my classmates asked me where I had been. I told them I was on vacation, but the teachers all knew. They said they were proud of me for being so brave. We had to wait a few days to find out the jury's decision, which is called the verdict. The jury found my dad guilty, which meant he would go to prison. We would have to wait several more weeks to find out how long he would spend in prison, which is called the sentence. I felt mad. Would I ever get to see him again? I didn't want to see him right now, but I might one day. This seemed very unfair. I was also relieved because in prison, he wouldn't be able to hurt me or any other kids. It has now been 6 months since I went to court. I still have nightmares about what happened, and I feel lonely and scared and confused. Part of me feels like I did a good thing by helping protect myself and other kids. And part of me feels guilty because now my dad is in prison. It's confusing to have all these different feelings. But Miss Kelly says it's normal to feel like this. She says I'm a warrior for getting through such a hard thing. Miss Kelly told me that someday, if I wanted, I'll be able to help other kids like me because I understand what it's like. She says I've already helped other kids by sharing my story. That makes me feel good. The end. This book is dedicated to the 100,000 plus children who bravely appear in courts each year. Visit montysdayincourt.com for resources and a discussion guide.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you. It meant so much more hearing you reading it versus when I read it. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Okay. I have a few questions, so if it's okay, I'm gonna ask one or two of those. If anyone does have questions, please feel free to send me a message in the chat, or we can get to those in just a minute. Okay, Jessica, you kind of already told us, but who is this book intended for? When you were writing it, who was the audience?
The audience is a child in need, obviously, but it's not meant to be handed to a child to just go off and read on their own. And maybe there are some children that need that. That's their learning style, but generally it's meant to be read with someone who's assisting the child in this process. Different age children are going to need different information, or they're going to need to know different things. And children as young as babies are put on the stand in laps. So it's whatever that child is able to hear and ready to hear. I think it's a good resource for them to have on their own, to take home, to look at when they're ready, to refer back to. But this book is really meant for any child going through this process. Some children are subpoenaed and then they never end up going through the trial, but they need to be prepared just in case. I'd say that's probably, I mean, I don't know the stats, but I hear that happens a lot. Plea deals are struck on the first day of court and the child never ends up sitting. But if they're worried about what might happen, this will give them some inclination. I mean, maybe they've seen court on TV like Monty had, but being able to have something to reference like our son did, he got a pamphlet, the What's Going On in Court pamphlet, and he looked at it. I mean, he went back and looked at it.
Right. And how old was he during this time, Jessica?
He was actually 10. Yeah. And we had adopted him from foster care the year before, and he had come to live with us the year before that. But any children need a caring adult to go through this with. We did have his therapist work with him a lot on this, which is why in this book we had the therapist break the news to him, because we did actually have it happen there. We did not have the advantage of a district attorney victim advocate. We did not have a child advocacy center. We did not have a CASA. We had to go find resources on our own. But my thought was, there needs to be a child's book about this. And I've been saying a lot lately, there needs to be children's books for a lot of really tough topics that are not addressed in children's books, because children relate to books.
They do. Yeah, they definitely do. And you did a great job making the book relatable. And I feel that the parent or support adult that's with the kid can take the words you've written and translate them or adapt them to a wide variety of ages to help them understand, right?
And that's what the discussion guide is also for, because not every child's going to want to dress up in a suit. That may be a good idea for some kids. Some children will want to wear whatever they want to wear. And some children will have other resources there, like Bikers Against Child Abuse. Some will have a victim advocate there in the courtroom with them. Some won't. Some will have a courtroom dog. Some won't. Some will be able to bring in a teddy bear. Some won't. And it really varies throughout the country of all the people I've spoken to. A lot of them, some were able to have stuff that we weren't, and we were able to have stuff they weren't. And it's just, you don't know what, so you need to learn what is going on in that court setting to really make it applicable for them.
And you had to cross state lines to attend court, correct? So it probably changed a lot depending on whether you were home or at court.
And we had to wait for about a week for the trial to start once we were out of state. And it was terrible. It was not like in a location that was fun for us to be in. So we were sort of stuck going crazy. So whatever you can do to ease a child's discomfort during that time and make it easier on them is what we need to do, so it doesn't become another adverse childhood experience.
Yeah, lovely. I'm happy you brought up ACEs. That was actually going to be my next question, was, as somebody who's gone through this as a parent, what advice would you have for another parent who's going through a similar situation?
in the case of our son, we knew the court was going to trial probably a year before we told our son about it, so that he didn't have extra time to fret about it. We gave him enough time so that we could get the support systems in place, like the court program and Bikers Against Child Abuse in our case. But then the court date was postponed 3 or 4 times, I can't remember. And that was very disruptive for us. So I guess I would say only tell them the relevant information that they need to know, so it doesn't become too scary, but make sure they have the support in place, especially at school and whatnot. So
yeah, I love the way you said that his teachers were aware. You wanted his teachers to know, but his classmates didn't. His classmates thought he was on a vacation, right? Because that's, again, drawing those boundaries where we don't want too much going on and then being asked too many questions, but also to feel supported. I loved that.
Yeah.
Okay. What about providers? If we're not a parent and somebody's in a similar situation, wherever the child is at in the process, providers, would you have this same type of advice, or do you have other advice for us?
Yeah, as providers, we really look to you to find the right resources for us, whether it's, those programs that can support. But just to know that the kid, this is even scarier for kids than it is for adults. And to try to find some aspect of it, aside from potentially not being heard anymore, that is good about it. Like we had to dig deep. They actually paid our son to appear. Like he got a witness fee, and we tried to help him think about like what fun thing he was going to spend it on. I don't know, to look for the positives that are going to come out of it. And also, we really, and we still do, we continue to talk about how brave he was, and that not just anybody can do this, because, there were other people who did not testify. There were plenty of other people who did not testify, and he was brave enough to do it.
That's hard. That's a big, big thing for a little guy.
It's a big thing for a little guy, and he was little.
A big thing for a big guy. That's a big thing for anyone, but definitely a huge thing for that little guy.
Especially today. We still say, look, your story is still continuing to help this many children. And we just looked at the stats, and over 2,000 books have been purchased in less than a year.
That's incredible. And
that's
you were
2,000 children you're helping.
Wow. Yeah. That's got to help him feel brave and strong.
It does, yeah.
Even though there is definitely
there's no positive.
You can never say that.
You can never say your parent is a bad parent, or someone, even if it's a soccer coach or someone, you can never say that they were a bad person, because it still reflects back on them.
Right.
You never say that person who was an important part of their lives, most likely, is a bad person. Just they made a mistake.
You use the words in the book that he was a grown-up and he made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Letting it be known to the child, I guess, that a choice was made. Yeah. A bad choice, but not a bad person.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Okay. What responses have you received from the community or from other providers like us, or after writing this book?
Well, it's been overwhelming, to be honest. In the beginning, I sought a lot of feedback, and there are definitely sections in this book that have changed since it was first published. We sought a lot of feedback because I learned more and more about like the norm or the non-norm, or the things that could be different, and I adjusted the book that way. For example, there was a sentence, an actual sentence in the book that, he went away for 100 years, similar to our son's biological father. That's not the norm. The norm is a plea deal. But the response has been overwhelming. And I'm thrilled to find, a way to help people, especially during a pandemic when I think a lot of us have felt really helpless. And maybe it's given people the time to evaluate resources while they're not, constantly in court and out of court. And that's great. But I really worry about what's going to happen after court is back in session, because the backlog is huge. The backlog is enormous. And I used to think that child abuse was a crisis. It's a pandemic in and of itself. So it feels really good to help people get prepared for what's next.
Thank you. Yeah, we launched a campaign last year called Keep Home Safe, because in our state, they said stay home, stay safe when the pandemic came out.
Right.
But we launched a campaign because home is not a safe place for everyone. Unfortunately, there's a big chunk of people that's not the case. Yeah. So we totally are with you on that one, unfortunately, and hopefully they're not backed up too far, because that just means, the worst, but likely that's what's to happen. So you're predicting the truth, and it's good for us to be prepared. Yeah. One question I didn't pre-prepare, but I would love to know a little more about how you and Gina met. Is that something that we can know about?
Sure. I thought of this book or the idea of the book, and I reached out to our local foster parent association, and lo and behold, I found an author, a children's book author, and a friendship was born. And we met a few times in person and talked a lot on the phone. And I never had to say, I want this page to be like this or this or this. Like, it was like we were sharing the same mind, because I'd say I want him to look, scared or small in the courtroom and confused. And it was just done. It was amazing. Now we need Gina to republish her original book, which is The Kid Who Moved In, about a foster that moves in with a biological sibling, and how that biological sibling adjusts. No pressure, Gina. But that was it's a great resource. It needs to be republished.
We look forward to that, Gina, if that ever happens.
Yeah, well, it's similar in that, when I did this book, The Kid Who Moved In, it was for my daughter, to help her, because I would talk to her. She was 4 years old, and I would talk to her about, we're going to start fostering children, and this is what this means. And it was confusing, and she just really didn't understand it, didn't even understand it enough to ask questions, right? And she's 4 years old. So I had this idea, well, I'll write a little book with illustrations, and it worked so well. So I was like, well, I should see if I can just publish this. But how I thought, well, how much need is there for this out there? I mean, it's going to be a very small market for this, because having a biological child so young, a lot of people wait to foster until their children have moved out. And so I didn't think there would be much need, but I just saw how well it worked with my daughter, and I was amazed. It's, you said at the beginning, Jessica, like, the books work so well with children. And I don't know what it is. You can tell them the same thing, but if you read and there are characters they can relate to, and the information is laid out for them, and it's a resource they can take and refer back to, it makes a huge difference. And so when Jessica had this great idea and she saw the need, it was similar with her personal experience with her son, then you identify a need, and we went from there.
Oh, I love it. And it was made. Thank you. Thanks for entertaining my little spur of the moment question there. I appreciate it. I'm happy you guys found each other and were able to collaborate and create this beautiful book that's much needed for kiddos in our whole country, because we're in different places. So hopefully kids all across the country. Are people buying the book all over, Jessica?
Yeah. And I'm exploring military court version and a tribal court version as well, because they are different courts. They have the same rule of law in theory, but the names are different, and it can be very different. Beyond that, I think there's a slew of books that still need to be written, and the really sad, really tough topics like human trafficking And, you know, in the case where a child is just a witness to violence, that book needs to be written. We chose very purposely not to use animals or other characters and to use real child because it's a real experience, not to be sugar-coated, and it's a tough topic. But I really think there's a lot of other books, if I didn't have a day job in software, that really could be written and with unlimited time. But I have just been really thrilled with the reception. I speak to lots of different organizations as I crawl through the victim organizations directory. But there's a lot of amazing organizations out there, thousands and thousands of organizations, which it has opened my eyes to really how many people care, but at the same time, what a need there is. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys were incredibly intentional in every page and every word of your guys' book.
Yeah, but it's also been made better by the organizations that have given me feedback. So I really, that's the beauty of self-publishing. I can change something very easily.
That's lovely. That's
and
nice.
The beauty of self-publishing is keeping the price low so that it's affordable for organizations. I'm always surprised when I see an order of 90 books go through. I'm like, wow, that is amazing. But it's because it is affordable. There are a lot of books out there for $15, $20, and organizations can't always afford them.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you have 2 versions, correct? Spanish and English?
Yeah. Yep.
And those are available on Amazon, and then you've also got a website, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question I have before we open it up, if anyone else has any, is just to tell me a little bit about where some of the proceeds go specifically with BACA and your experience with them. I chatted with them yesterday on the phone, and they said that they'd love for you to talk a little bit about them.
I could talk for days about BACA in of it that well, I'll back up. The book is priced almost at cost. Amazon does require a 10-cent overage when creating a book for sale, so that it can't just be sold at straight cost. And whatever is left over, I donate to BACA. And this year also, I'm going to add Courthouse Dog Foundation and some other child advocacy organizations. And then I've given away a number of copies as well. But BACA, in the case of our son, I think that's like the thing that really got us through the tough time, because they would visit in the 7 or so months that it took for us to actually go to court. They were out of state with us. Like, they didn't go out of, but the chapter out of state was there for us. And while we were waiting, they were there for us. They walked us to court. They stood outside court. They took my son to a zoo. They are still in touch with us, and it's really amazing the dedication of the members. A lot of people, associate bikers as these really tough,
scary, macho, intimidating guys.
Unlawful figures. They are not. They are fully vetted in so many ways. They take classes. They are amazing people who spend a lot of their time being there for children. And a lot of them are very sympathetic and having been through some tough times in their lives. And I just, their initiation process for bringing a child into their family is so intense and so needed. And our whole neighborhood still talks about that whole initiation process, because you could probably hear it for a few neighborhoods away. But
I've been to a few BACA events, so I know exactly what you mean. Yes, you can hear it for a few streets away.
Yeah. And BACA was originally in the book, but we decided to take it out of the book because it, I think, has a broader reach for children who don't have access to BACA. That being said, BACA is a worldwide organization. They are,
and I'm sure they wish they had chapters. Yeah.
And I know our local chapter, I cannot say enough great things about them. So.
Well,
I
I
love
will.
that piece of story. I had never heard of Baca when I started, doing the illustrations, and that just made me cry. Like, just, it's so amazing. And I can only imagine how your son felt when he was surrounded by all these, big
Yes.
people who were there to
A
help.
lot of them are very tall and very imposing. You don't feel scared when they have your back. That's what we used to always say. Baca has our back. Like when we drove to the airport, they followed us with 20 vehicles. When we went from the airport to the hotel, they followed us. I mean, it was just, if we were going to drive from our state to the other state that we had to, they were going to drive behind us the entire way. I mean, the dedication and the love that they give is so amazing. So,
But that's so important too, because in the book, it talks about how your son feared that his dad would actually pull the bars apart and escape. I mean, so to have that physical presence was very meaningful, right?
it was very meaningful. He was, he's like, I'm going to be in the same city as my father, and I haven't been for years. And in my son's case, he hadn't been in the same city in 4 years. And he was worried he was going to get out and get him while he was there. So it was really great having these people who were tougher than us. I mean, we could keep him safe, but Baca could keep him safe. So we said
They made him feel safe. Yeah. Yeah, we love our local Baca chapter as well. They came to an event we did, what was it, 2 years ago maybe, and they all rolled up on their motorcycles and they gave temporary tattoos to the kids at the event, just those little wash-on ones. Yeah, and it was such a fun little station. They're just the greatest. So thank you for telling me about that. I don't know if anyone else has any questions on the call. I don't have any chats. If you do, go ahead and say so now. If not, we'll kind of wrap up. But Jessica, do you have anything else you'd like to say or share with us, or Gina?
No, I mean, if you want to get in touch with us, visit montysdayincourt.com, and happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you for being willing to do this. It was like a week ago, I think, that I reached out. So it was so spur of the moment. You guys have been incredible to work with, and thank you for writing this book. And we'll be sure this video gets shared with those who hopefully can use it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.